So, hi guys, and it's Alex again, back for another video. This time around, we're going to test your skills with one puzzle only. So we're going to follow along for most of the video, and it's going to be 8-ply follow along. And then at some point, I'll ask one puzzle, and if you are able to solve it, then certainly congratulations will be in order, because this was a game between two very, very strong grandmasters, and the grandmaster with the black pieces who blundered was a grandmaster rated just over 2,600. So an extremely strong grandmaster, and at the time would have been around the top 100 players in the world. So the game started with e4, c6, d4, d5, e5, c5, knight f3, and c takes d4. Can you picture that position? Let's put it on the board. e4, c6, d4, d5, e5, c5, knight f3, c takes d4. White continued with queen takes d4, knight to c6, queen f4, e6, bishop to d3, knight b4, castle, and knight takes d3. Let's put that on the board. Queen takes d4, knight c6, queen f4, e6, bishop d3, knight b4, castle, and knight takes d3. So far, how has it been going following along this position? Hopefully it's been going well. If not, then as mentioned, especially in the last video, 8-ply really is, I think, quite a big jump from 6-ply. So don't be too hard on yourselves if it has been a little bit difficult. Let's continue. C takes d3, knight e7, knight c3, knight g6, queen g3, bishop e7, knight e2, and castle. So let's put that on the board. C takes d3, knight e7, knight c3, knight g6, queen g3, bishop e7, knight e2, and castle. So, did the position that you now see on the board match the position that was in your mind's eye? Sometimes most players will, or many players will be able to roughly see the position, but as we move forward more and more moves, the position gets a little bit blurrier, or they remember where all the pieces are, but maybe they forget where exactly one of the pieces are, or they make little differences, like perhaps they might think the pawn might forget if the pawn was on a3 or if it was on a2, little details like that. Okay, so we will continue. White here played knight f4, bishop to d7, bishop to e3, rook to c8, a3, a5, rook f to c1, and rook takes c1 check. Let's put that position on the board. white played knight f4, bishop to d7, bishop to e3, rook to c8, pawn to a3, pawn to a5, rook f to c1, and rook takes c1 check. Now we will have one more series of moves that we are going to try to visualize before the puzzle arrives on the board. So far, we're not really trying to picture, trying to solve for tactical problems in each position. If you're playing a real game, it's not just about visualizing and being able to sort of keep track of where the pieces are. You also have to expend a little bit more energy to see what kind of threats you can create and things like that. So this is kind of an in-between step. Over the board, it will require to visualize and also other elements like pattern recognition and calculation. So let's continue. White here played rook takes c1, queen went to b8, pawn to h4, and now comes the puzzle. Black played knight takes e5, and this move was a big blunder. So let's call out the moves again. White played rook takes c1, black played the queen to b8, white played the pawn to h4, and now black took the pawn on e5. Knight takes e5. Try, if you feel like you're up to the challenge, try to take this position as it is right now and try to solve as to why knight takes e5 is not a good move. Okay, so if you have found the solution, then very well done. Or if you think you've found the solution, I will now put on the board the position. I will put knight takes e5, and once again, I'll give you an opportunity to try and solve it for those of you who still didn't come up with the solution. So rook takes c1 was played, queen b8, white played h4, and here we see something actually about the white player who was a 2,727 rated player at the time, one of Russia's strongest grandmasters by the name of Dmitry Andreikin. He had certainly seen that the pawn on e5 was poisoned, but his opponent did not. So his opponent here captured the pawn, and now is your second opportunity to try and figure out what the winning idea is here for white. Okay, I will now show the idea, but without moving the pieces. Knight takes e5, queen takes e5, and the idea is that the queen on e5 is undefended, the bishop on e7 is undefended, and white has the clever move knight g6, forking the queen and the bishop. If black plays queen takes g3, can you see what white would play? In the game, black didn't take on g3, instead he played queen to f6. Can you see what the point was for white, what he played on the next move? Let's show the position on the board. After knight takes e5, queen takes e5, knight to g6. The point is that if black captures the queen, then white will take the bishop on e7 with check against the black king, and after the king moves, then he will recover his queen. So he will be left a piece to the good. This is why black played the move queen to f6, but here the problem is that the rook on f8 is under attack, so white was able to win an exchange for just a pawn. If you guys managed, some of you at home will have managed to solve this puzzle, then very well done, because I really don't think it's especially easy tactical puzzle. Here we can now return to our visualization, and we will show the remainder of the game by visualizing. The remainder of the game went bishop takes f8, rook c7, bishop to c6, rook c8, queen to e7, pawn to b4, a takes b4. Can you picture that position? Let's put it on the board. So after knight takes f8, black played bishop takes f8, rook to c7, bishop to c6, rook to c8, queen to e7, and b4 by white with the threat of bishop to c5. Black here captured the pawn with a takes b4. Once again, we will finish the game. There's only a few moves left with visualizing the end. So white here played a takes b4, queen takes b4, and then bishop h6, and the black king went to h8 because he wanted to sidestep the pin from the queen on g3. However, the game ended on the next move. Can you guys solve the puzzle? What is white's best move? So once again, I will put that position. I will say the moves. A takes b4, queen takes b4, bishop h6, king h8. White to play and win. Let's put it on the board. A takes b4, queen takes b4, bishop h6, king h8. If you haven't solved it before, you can give it another shot at solving it from this position. The solution is queen takes g7, checkmate. The bishop cannot take the queen because the rook is pinning it to the king. So while this final position, this little puzzle with taking on g7 was perhaps not super challenging, certainly it was very challenging, the earlier puzzle, because we were seeing quite a lot of moves ahead up to 8 ply, and we were following a very high-level game between two modern, very, very strong grandmasters. So if you were able to see the tactical ideas after knight takes e5 and why that pawn was poisoned, then congratulations. And if not, then don't be too hard on yourselves, because this kind of visualization work requires a lot of practice, and it is one of the more challenging aspects of the game. Nevertheless, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you found it educational, and I hope to see you in the next one.